Despite being a somewhat affordable device and also coming from a pedigree that kept things pretty simple, the OnePlus 2 actually adds some new features in this new iteration. So we wanted to take a look at what those features are and give you our thoughts on them. So it's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is a look at the new features that are put into the OnePlus 2. Now we're going to start off with the action slider, which is found on the left side, and this is one of the main additions that you see right off the bat. It is a 3-stage slider that allows you to toggle among the different notification settings in Lollipop. You can of course go for all notifications if you want everything to come in, priority notifications if you starred anybody in your contacts list, for example, and then of course have no notifications, which is essentially like silencing the phone. Now, moving among the 3 different stages is actually very simple and very meaty. You'll be able to find this button very easily if it's in your pocket, which I think is the main usage of it. If you happen to have your phone in your pocket, or it might be just lying on a table, you can easily feel the textured button on there and slide it down to the bottom position or the top position, depending on whether you want to have your phone silenced or not. We then go into the other very obvious feature that is on the front of the phone, the fingerprint reader. Now, the fingerprint reader is also the home button, but it's not a button per se. It's just this little area that was carved out in order to house the actual reader itself. Now, this is a press type rather than a swipe type, which is always more preferred. And basically what you have to do is just set up your fingerprint in the settings, and you can do it with up to 5 different fingerprints, but mostly you'll be doing it with your thumbs. Once your fingerprints are registered, they can actually wake and unlock the device even when the device is sleeping. So if you have the device locked, you just have to rest your finger on that area and the phone will wake up after sensing your fingerprint and unlock the phone directly. Now, my only real caveat when it comes to the fingerprint reader down here, and also the fact that it is a home button capacitive wise, is the fact that it's not as sensitive as I would want it to be. Now, I know that this is more of a personal issue, but when I have my finger down on there, I have to completely cover the entire area in order for it to register, even as a home button. It's not necessarily a problem with the way that it is constructed. It might just be that I need to get used to hitting the button a little bit differently, but really you have to put down a little bit of weight on there, and also you have to cover the entire area, and it is then that you're going to have a much more consistent home button and fingerprint reader. The next feature we're going to cover is one that actually is a pretty big deal, but it might not seem like it out in the West, and it's dual SIM capabilities. Now, in the United States, you don't really see dual SIMs in pretty much any of the phones, and there are some pretty good reasons for that, because that's the way our phone companies want it. They want you to be on one particular carrier and not have really any allegiances to anybody else. You know, with a dual SIM phone, you could use the data from one card and then take calls on another, and you can really cater the experience to what you want it to be by paying a little bit of extra money to have 2 different carriers in your repertoire. But with the dual SIM here, you can also use the dual SIMs for traveling. So if you were to have your personal home SIM card inside in the 1 slot, you can have a travel card in the 2 slot and not worry about having to remove anything and switching them out from time to time. But what I did find is that in the operating system, switching between the 2 SIM cards can be a little bit cumbersome. Having to change which data you want to use from which card can sometimes make the phone slow down, and also it takes a little while for it to even register that both of the SIM cards are in there and switch between the 2. Now, the problem with that is if you really need to change from one card to the other, let's say you used up your data from one card and you want to use the data from the other so you don't incur any overage charges, it might take a little while for it to finally finish. Now, whether or not this is a software issue or if this is just the way that dual SIM cards really work on the OnePlus 2 remains to be seen. I have had other phones that have had dual SIM capabilities and they weren't quite as hard to use as this one. That being said, however, one real remedy that you can use here is to go into the SIM card area, choose which SIM cards you want to use for calls, texting, or data, and then just restart the phone and it should work from there. Now, the last hardware feature we're going to cover is the USB Type-C port on the bottom and its subsequent cord. Now, the cord is very similar to the one you got in the OnePlus 1 in that it is a flat construction and it comes in that red and white. Now, having it flat does mean that it's not going to tangle so easily, which is always nice, and it just looks kind of cool. But the best part about the cord itself is that on either end it is reversible, so no matter how you plug in, no matter what orientation you plug it into either the phone or the USB port, it will go through, which is nice. Kind of takes out the guesswork from the micro regular USB ones if it was supposed to be upside down or right side up. Now, the thing about the USB Type-C cord here is that it is basically a 2.0 construction, which means that it's not going to be using USB 3.0 for data transfer, and it's not going to be using any quick charging capabilities. Trust me, I already tried. I used my Moto quick charger and the phone charged very normally. But that being said, the USB Type-C charging does seem to be at least a little bit above average. It's not necessarily a very slow charger, but it's also not a very fast charger. It's kind of in the middle path. When the phone was off, it took about 90 minutes to get from 0 to 100%. When the phone was on, but not being used very often, it took about 2 hours. That's not terrible. Obviously, we would want to have our phones charged within the hour, like some of these quick charging capabilities allow for, but the OnePlus 2 simply will not be providing that. But really, it's nice that OnePlus is at least going to be making those cords available for a very low price, about $5. So if you're looking to get into the standard of USB Type-C, OnePlus is making it very easy for you to do so. Which brings us to the shelf. Now, originally I thought of the shelf as just 2 widgets that were available for your frequent apps and your frequent contacts. And during our first look, that was pretty much how it was being marketed. But then after a little bit more investigation, I found that the shelf is actually a page where you can put a bunch of different widgets. So for someone like me that usually has just one page dedicated to some production apps, well, now I can put those widgets on the shelf and just scroll down underneath the 2 ones that are already included, and I can have things like the Evernote app down there to easily access certain parts of my productivity. You can also customize it a little bit by changing up the cover on the top, a small portion of it that is customizable, but other than that, adding various different kinds of widgets on there is actually pretty cool, and you can always rearrange them pretty easily. Really, it's not just a place for you to put, or rather for the phone to put, all of the apps that you use on a frequent basis. It could also be where you put your frequented widgets. That way you will keep your home screens pretty bare, and everything that you need to use can be put onto a side home screen. And finally, there's the dark mode. Now, the dark mode is something that's supposed to come in a future edition of Android, but OnePlus has been able to put it into their version 2.0 of Oxygen OS. Now, the idea behind the dark mode is to just take all of the light elements in Android and make them dark, obviously. But the main crux of this is that it will make the phone easier to view in certain situations, like let's say you're lying in bed, winding down the day and getting ready for bed, and all the lights in your room are off. Instead of having this really bright white color just emitting in your face, you have a darker tone that makes it a little bit easier on the eyes. Now, that is a great feature, and I have used it already in the days that I've had the OnePlus 2, and it has proven to be nice to have at the end of the day. But also, I've just kept the dark mode on because it tends to really make the Android interface look different, and in my opinion, makes it look a little bit better. Now, the dark mode can be contextualized in certain applications like Pocket Casts. It does change the elements in there as well, but one thing you have to keep in mind is if you're using any other applications like, let's say, Reddit, you have to go into that application and find its dark mode to make it match. It's not going to be something that is automatic across the board. Keep it tuned to Android Authority for my full review of the OnePlus 2. We're going to put everything together, including this, the camera, and the general usage of it on the daily, and I will give you my full review pretty soon after we get all the updates from OnePlus to finalize our experience. Keep it tuned to Android Authority for all of that. Drop us some likes on our videos and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And then when you're done with that, listen to the Android Authority podcast and then head on over to androidauthority.com for even more, because we are your source for all things Android.